Hi there, thank you so much for clicking the thumbnail and being interested in my work. In this video, part 2, I discuss how I created the background in pastels, then adding all the final coats to the stag, then merging everything together so it looks like a complete painting rather than separate elements. So be sure to watch it right through till the end, because here and there I'll be slowing things down in real time so you can take a closer look. So let's dive in and take a look. This is where I left it at the end of part 1. Before I start putting the background in, I realised that the antlers was not drawn correctly. I used a Faber-Castell putty rubber or kneadable eraser to rub out the excess pigment, and then just laid over with grey and white and adjust accordingly. Now before I start laying in all the colour, what I tend to do is have a play on a little bit of scrap pastel mat and see what colours work. So it's just a case of picking colours out your kit which is similar and having a play and see how they combine together to create the actual texture and feel you're looking for before you start. So these are the colours I'll be using initially. It'll all change as you go along. It's just an initial start. You've got to try something to start with, and then you have ideas as you go along. As this background is quite complicated, I tend to find the big shapes to start with. Squinting the eyes will help you to find those different shapes, but you really don't worry about getting the value correct or the depth of value or the different tones right. All this basic underdrawing is to get everything in the correct place and a general feel for where things go before you start laying in the next layers. Eventually I'll be laying over with these colours here, which is the yellow ochre, blue and cold red and a brown, so that'll help me to get all the tones and everything more in place. Just playing a little bit on a section here just to see if it will work, but then I'll move on then and get that underdrawing all completed first before I start putting the colours on. Right, so I'm just going to quickly explain to you here how I'm doing this. It's just looking at the whole of the image, keeping the image small enough so you can see the whole thing, and try and get a general feel of oneness as you're drawing it. So I let go of the mind, open the heart, and let it just flow from there. And it's just creating that balance. So you have to sort of squint your eyes and see where the balance of things are. Doesn't really matter about getting exactly in the same position, but if you can get it close to, it makes it easier then when you start putting the colours on, so you don't lose your way so much. But basically it's just a case of using the white and the grey to create a drawing to start with. Right, here's the colours I'll be laying over the top of that underdrawing. Now I used 3 stages, the outline, underdrawing. Now this is the rich stage, so what I'm doing really is trying to get the chroma, the values and the shapes more detailed. Now it's not the detail stage, that will be the end of the video, but basically what I'm doing is using white and the grey to reshape it and then just glaze over this greeny blue colour look. And then what I'm doing is going over that with white and grey again, adding more detail, glaze again with the green, and then keep repeating that until you get the correct sort of feel. Now what I'm adding is cold red with the greeny blue pencil there, which is creating natural subtleties and shadows. So if you ever want to create a natural shadow, use the complementary colour, because that's a greeny bluey pencil. The red's perfect for it, and it just seems to work pretty well. It just makes that subtly purpley greeny grey colour that I'm looking for this landscape. If you're enjoying this video, why not subscribe? It's absolutely free, and then you're sure not to miss any of my future videos. So in a nutshell, It's just using the white to get the shapes and everything, the white and the grey, and then glaze over that greeny blue and the red, which is creating that subtlety, and then refine it. So basically that's how I'm creating the texture of the snow. I will add more subtleties to that at the end of this video when I put the final details in, but basically this is what the rich colour stage is. It's just getting an idea of the value, the colour and the chroma. Now for the bark of the tree, so I'm using the blue and the brown together to create subtle greys. You don't want it too dark, so I won't use black because it's too sort of misty. You know, black is more for the foreground really. So brown and blue makes really great greys. So I'm working that in now, and then I'm working some sort of texture in there while I'm doing it, because you've got the bark of the tree. But first I'll just get some colour down, so just put some brown down, and then blue with it, and then red. Well, that'll create, then the blue and red will create a purpley browny colour, which I'm looking for. That's why I put that in. And then go again with the white, so I'm getting the sort of texture with the white. And then what I'll do then is glaze over once I've got the texture of the bark. You're only putting it on very lightly as well, because there's not much pigment you need really, just to create this sort of subtle grey colour, with all these subtle blends of reds and browns and blues and purples. So just a little bit of pigment there, and then just using that white creates that sort of nice texture you're looking for, and then just go in between with a bit of brown just to create that sort of depth to it. And just keep glazing with the different sort of combinations of pencils, and it seems to come together really, and you just keep building it up. Go over white again, then glaze, white and glaze, until you get the desired effect. What I like to do as well is go over it with the light grey as well. So you're using your brown and your blue, then just go over with a bit of light grey, and then it sort of makes it recede a little bit more. Now you know this procedure of the background. I'm going to speed it up quite quickly now, so it leaves me space then to go into depth on how I did the stag and the final subtleties. While observing that, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all my Patreons for all their wonderful support every month. I can't thank you enough. It makes all this possible. I really appreciate it. Now, if you're interested in and considering joining me on Patreon and would like the benefit of longer, slower and more in-depth videos, please check out the link in the description below. Now, this painting will be on there at some point. All the footage will be included. It will be slowed down to as slow as I can get to real time, so you can see every mark I make and every pencil I use. Now, it's a great price. It's only £4 a month, but that will give you access to every video on there on Patreon. Be sure to check out the link in the description below, where it'll send you over to my website, where you can see every video there as a thumbnail, so it gives you an idea of what's on offer. I'm just slowing it down a little now so you can see how I'm refining the anklers there and just putting a bit more depth in there, a bit more sort of contrast. It gives me an idea then of how light the snow needs to be behind the anklers there. So I'm using dark grey, which is 708 Pastel pencil, and then I'll be using brown and blue, and then adding red and yellow ochre in there for the warm areas of the anklers. Now, if you're doing a painting with this amount of detail in, you can get a little bit tense if you're not careful. Now, the way I found the solution is to let go of the mind, open the heart, and just reconnect to here and now and be one with the subject. So when I'm looking at the reference image, I feel I'm actually there. I sense the coldness of it and try and let that feeling and that emotion flow through your hands, out to your fingertips, through the pencil, onto your board. And it's surprising how it just flows without any effort then, because if you start to think too much, it becomes a little bit sort of tunnel vision, and you lose that sort of peripheral vision as well, because when you're aware, you can be aware of everything, but when you think, you can only think of one thing, and it becomes like a tunnel vision. So I always let go of thoughts and just totally be here and now and just let it happen. Now for the foreground snow, I started off using the Carbothello white, but then I grabbed a Conti Paris white stick out of my box. It's really good to actually use this is when you're doing big areas like this, because it's quite a chalky pigment, so it sort of helps the subsequent layers glide. You see, it takes away some of that tooth of the pastel mat, but leaves enough so you can put the detail, but the pencils will glide more on it. So then I went over them with the Carbothello white just to sort of smooth it out and create that texture I'm looking for. But it just helps, you see, having that base colour of Conti Pastel white there just makes it easier to apply. Then I just glazed over that blue-green pencil with the red to create that subtle grey, purpley grey, greeny colour I was looking for. It's just a case of actually mapping out the little bits of shrubbery there and the shadows in the snow, just getting an idea of where things are. So you're just mapping it out using the white and the grey again. Then what I did is glazed over with like a bluey grey pencil, which is similar to colour I'm looking for, so just trying to get that sort of value right, and then I can just subtle it up with the blues and the other colours on top. I slowed it down to real time now so you can take a closer look at the technique here. I'm doing it quite slow, small circles. Now I'm using the Caran Dash Azurite white here. It's a really fresh white. Now I have a collection of different whites from different brands, because Carbothello white, you only can go so far, it's not fresh enough. So Faber-Castell white is really good if you haven't got a Caran Dash, that's nice and fresh and white, so use that. But what it does, it gives you that vibrancy underneath the colour then, so when you glaze over there again with the colours, it's more crisper and fresher. So I'll just continue the same procedure right through the foreground snow here. If you're enjoying this video, why not give it a like and share it with your friends? It would mean so much to me, as this will help the channel to grow. So again, for the shadow areas, I'm using the grey and then glazing over top of that with either the blue or maybe the dark greeny blue with a little bit of red, just to subtle it up. Now the rich colour stage of the Stag is all about, again, is about getting the value right and the chroma, and basically getting a better sort of positioning of all the elements and making sure everything feels right and the textures there. The details will come later, like I mentioned. I always like to put details in right at the end, but it basically, you're just enjoying getting the values and the chroma right and the colours. I'm using like a burnt umber, yellow ochre, burnt sienna, and then the blue. So it's the same combination I use for the underdrawing, but all it is putting more pigment down there to make it more richer. I am aware of getting the tint correct though, because it has to feel part of the background and the surroundings. The image of the deer I've used from a different source to the background, so it's two different photographers, so I have to make sure that the actual deer feels as though it's part of the colour and the scenery. So I've altered it. You see all this in part 1 anyway, of what I've done, but I'm just making sure that it still feels as though it's there rather than a cutout. So you have to be aware of that and just adjust accordingly. I use the same colours as the underdrawing, and these are the ones here just visually so you can see them. So I'm putting very light pressure onto the pencil, just letting the pastel matte, grain of the pastel matte, just take the pigment off, so I'm not pressing on too hard. Mixing the burnt umber, burnt sienna and the yellow ochre together to create the subtle shadows and colour I need, and then reshaping with a little bit of white here and there. I'm just having a play now to see how I can get the snowflakes over the deer. So I've used a light grey there. It's light grey, bit of bluey greeny colour to it actually, so it's just perfect for this sort of thing. And so I'm just playing at this stage to see if it works, getting an idea what I need to do later, because I'm going to put snowflakes all over the deer to create it so it merges with the background, and put snowflakes over the box of the tree or on dark areas, just make sure there's a snowflake here and there. But I'll show you all that later on in the video. Now, how I tidied up the actual fur of the stag is just to keep glazing over with the colours to start with to get the correct sort of value, and then go over with the brown and white to reshape the sort of texture of the fur, and then glaze over again. So that's what you'll be seeing me do here. But basically get that value more or less right first, because this is the second stage, which is about getting the value right and the chroma, but then use the white to get the sort of subtlety of the direction of the fur as well, and then glaze over again. It's just a case of just keep doing the same until you get the correct feel to it. You're building layer after layer after layer. Slowing it down now to real time. For the most important part of the painting really is the focus on the head of the stag, because that's where the emotions is, and that's what's going to grab the attention. So I've spent a lot of time really merging into the whole scene of it and making sure that it feels like it belongs in that landscape, and also focusing on the emotion of the animal as well. I will put some mist coming out of the nose. I'll make that up just to create again that feeling of that it belongs in that cold environment on that particular day. Right, so I'm just going to use that light grey pencil now just to create here and there some snowflakes. So I'm just doing a dot here and there, and I'm going all over the antlers, the stag itself, and also the background. So I'll be putting snowflakes every sort of now and again, just randomly. But you don't have to be too mad, don't go too crazy. It's just enough just to make it believable, and it makes it feel like the stag actually belongs in that sort of environment, because like I said, I used a different photograph in a different scene for this particular painting. Now I've made this mist coming out of the nostrils there, made it up by just finding a picture on Google of a deer in cold weather, and I just came up with a random picture, and then I just made it up from that really. And it's just a matter of really having a go. It does take a while to actually shape together, and you think you've spoilt the picture actually when you're doing it. You think, oh my god, what have I done? But if you persevere, that's my technique, is to persevere. It does come together. So I've used the white, then I've used the same colour what's in the background, that blue greeny colour, then I'm using the brown in there just so you could see the actual coat through the mist and just try and feel and make it believable. Really, it's just a case of having a go and seeing how it looks, and keep looking in the mirror at the reflection just to see if it looks believable, and keep changing it until you're happy with it. Basically, that's all it is. Hope you've enjoyed this video. Don't forget there's part 1 if you haven't seen part 1 already. I will leave a link in the description below for you to find that. Also, I'll leave a link for the Patreon as well if you're interested or considering joining me on Patreon. There's loads of videos on there now, and a lot of it is real time, and there's a lot of it is step by step where you can actually hear me talking and see me working at the same time. So there's loads of videos to choose from there, so please check that out. Here's the painting at the correct angle rather than being in perspective on the easel. Thank you so much for watching the video right till the end. If you're interested in seeing more of my work, please check out these links here. Take care. Thank you. Bye.